It's been 5 months, and now we finally have bookings in our Airbnb for Joshua Tree. But gosh, that was 5 months of, I'd say, way more downs than there were ups. We want to jump into the entire story with our business partner, Ash. Let's jump into it. This video is long overdue. Quick opinions in terms of how you thought this was all going to play out. How far off are we?
I think I expected unexpected, but I didn't know how much unexpected to expect, if that makes sense. So I knew that there was going to be some like things that popped up, but I think I didn't expect the timeline to be as far out as we saw it to be. So I think we closed on it in September, right? And then we didn't officially launch until this year. So
Yes, we are finally have payouts scheduled, but to get to where we have payouts now in the queue and bookings, God is like this is the story time episode. So we'll jump into it. We were looking in Joshua Tree. Like when did like Joshua Tree start? Like the idea was it like May, June-ish, maybe?
yeah, I feel like we jumped into it pretty quick though. We're like, we're gonna do it, let's go. And then we started looking at markets, and Joshua Tree seemed to be like the best market as far as like numbers wise.
We were actually under contract for a property before this that we ended up falling out of contract real quick because Ash.
There was a vicious dog next door. So we were in contract for a property in Joshua Tree as well. I decided to go out there to just take a look and walk the property. Luckily, I did because next door, right next door to the property, I was looking out the window of the living room and I saw a sign on the neighbor's wall. It said, "This dog has fatally attacked men," and so that was like a red flag. There was no way that we can change that, and so we decided to back out of that one because that would not be a positive guest experience.
Yeah, so we were super bummed, and you were actually on that trip to go and walk that property. And I think it was good that, best case scenario, obviously, one, because of the dog, but two, because the neighborhood that we were previously under contract with was not as good as the one that we are currently uh, now owning. So we found this one in August, right on that trip. As you were leaving, I found the listing. And I would say at this point in the market, it was so hot that we had to make an offer sight unseen, and we made the offer without even walking it, right?
Right.
Um, our agent Chantel wasn't able to get out there yet, but we knew that if we didn't write, it would be gone in 24 hours. Um, and it was between us and another offer.
Yes. And we found out that the other offer was like an FHA loan. So
So we just won because we weren't the FHA, which means that you wouldn't have to go through some of the extra due diligence from the lender's perspective. So that was August. And then once you're under contract, you have to do so much due diligence, almost too much. And there was a few interesting things that we found on this one. So, well, I guess the first thing that we both noticed was just the placement of the stove, right?
yep.
So what did you think about that?
Yeah. So the stove was tucked up against a corner in the kitchen, right next to the wall. And so, and there was a light switch right above the stove for the kitchen. And so that was not functional. And then on the other side of the kitchen, that was where the refrigerator was. And so we thought to swap the two locations because I think it made better functional sense. And not knowing that how expensive that would be too. More on that later, I guess.
Yeah. So, that was apparent just by the pictures. Like, hey, man, what's going on here? Part of the due diligence is, of course, getting your property inspection, and it came back fairly clean. There was some electrical things where almost, I would say, I don't know, a few of the bedroom outlets weren't working and some of the light switches weren't working. And so we
Right.
had to get that assessed. And then we didn't do a sewer scope because it was on septic that we found out later, although the previous owner or the seller did list it as that it was connected from onto the sewer main line, but it wasn't. Um,
And that was another big ticket item for us because Yucca Valley is doing like a rolling transition to city sewer. And so we were required to eventually connect it to city sewer. And so that was an unexpected cost from the right out from the front. So
yeah. And so we were, from everything that was on the inspection, we have to get bids through contractors just to see how much that would be. For some of them, we tried to get seller credits for, including the basically $7,000 cost of connecting the septic to then the city main. But he said, no, market's so hot, take it or leave it. So he took it.
I'll
um,
say the upside to that was we can finance a lot of it, right? I think we discovered that later on.
we did. And that was, I guess, a pleasant solution that obviously we're still going to be paying for over the course of 30 years at like 1% interest, which means that that's negligible in terms of a short-term rental. But okay, so that was August. So September, we are closing on the property. I mean, one thing to note, we did finance this with a 10% down second home loan. We intend to be there for a little bit every single year, and also it's just a beautiful area. But part of that also has an appraisal contingency, and so we purchased it for $400,000, and it actually appraised. Did it appraise for like 410? I think
Yep, 410.
$10,000 off the bat. Woohoo!
Yay! For me personally, I was more excited about this property than the other one, just because it looked more unique and it was more spacious
Mhm.
than the other one. And I think this was like right before closing is when we found out that there's actually potentially 4 bedrooms instead of 3. So that was like another pleasant surprise.
But yeah, we closed on the property, I'd say end of September. The fun quick story about us then arriving at the property was that we got there late at night. And so we're looking for the keys that was attached to a lockbox on the side. And we got there at 11 o'clock at night. I had to get one more extra air mattress. And I remember going to Walmart before they closed at midnight. But then our neighbor came up to the window shirtless with like Hannah and Ezra, who was, I think, I guess he was 2 or 3 at the time. He was 3. And it was like late at night. And he was just like there, like knocking on the window. And I remember her calling me, like, oh my God, who's this at the window? And he was saying that he's a neighbor, but obviously it's late at night, new house, new neighborhood. Everybody in the situation's freaked out. So I remember like at Walmart paying for all this stuff and just rushing home. Um, that was an interesting way to start the trip.
And I think Hannah mentioned that when he knocked on the window, she's like, "Oh, we're the new neighbors. My husband is here with me." So she like emphasized that.
That is actually I'm very bad at remembering conversations, but now, yes, you did say that, and I was definitely not there. Um, but that trip was fun. We did plan out, obviously, one to just do a whole bunch of yard work to save some money. And then we wanted to really do a mural in that bonus room. And how did you find the muralist, Ash?
It was just through we actually were getting bids from actual painters for the house, and I just happened to ask one of the painters if they know any muralists or if they do murals, and so she referred us to somebody, one of her good friends who does murals. So he was really good. She showed us some of his work, and he came out. I think that we scheduled him to come out when we were out there, and he did the whole mural in less than half the day. I think, wasn't it, Josh?
Yeah, he was super fast. Actually, I don't think
Yeah.
you guys were even out there yet because I remember us
No, we missed
FaceTiming
it.
you.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
it looked good. Yeah, I think it was like less than 6 hours or something like that. So,
yeah, for the entire
yeah.
walk. I remember us thinking, actually, oh, we could do this ourselves.
I will say Hannah could probably do it now that I've seen her artwork.
So I'm gonna put a picture of that one now. But yeah, and then the next few days, there was Jason and I. He came first, and we broke down. We were kicking down the pergola, and the rest of the days was like grabbing shovels, and we were like, there was like just like dead bushes all over the place. There was a whole bunch of like blueberry trees. What else was there? I don't know, but like I
There was
remember
some
like just
hay bales. Do you remember that?
oh yeah, because
Because
there
I
used
think
to
the
be a
previous
chicken
owner,
coop.
yeah, there used to be a chicken coop cut, so it smelled pretty bad back there with all the hay. So that was rough.
Yeah, yeah, that was the backyard is, and there was no fences yet either, so um, I'm glad that got taken care of. And the last part of that was meeting all the vendors. I think you and Hannah actually did a bulk of scheduling all the vendors. So how did you guys kind of think about that?
Yeah, I think Hannah and I kind of thought about what type of questions we want to ask for each vendor and kind of listed those questions out and tried to ask the same questions across the same, like if we were looking for cleaners, we'd ask the same questions to kind of compare and contrast. And then we created a short list of all the vendors and asked them if we can meet them in person when we're out there. So I think it was good to have them see the property, walk it, I think the main thing was finding the cleaner, and then a painter, which Hannah found as well. So it was great.
Yeah, and the last thing I tried to do was install the fans myself as we were leaving, which was just an ultimate fail. I tried to save money, but it didn't work.
You tried though. It's good. I think you were close to getting one up.
I did. Well, I don't know. It's just there's things in the ceiling that like it wouldn't come down, and
I
I
will
don't know.
say a note to that though. Good thing we did explore that, or you took it down, because I think we found out that whoever installed those fans installed the wrong bracket. So when we actually did have an electrician come in and install the brackets or install the new fans, he did call that out. He said these brackets are actually not safe for these type of fans, and you had actually bought the right bracket, so you're on the right track. I'll say that.
October was crazy. That was when we were having all the vendors start work. We had a fence contractor that was initially scheduled, and his original bid was like $3,800. And then he would send me a picture of his work, and it looked great. And he bidded it out. And then I remember I was going to sign the contract and about to wire money for materials, and he ghosted me.
Yes, and then I remember you're like, "I haven't heard back from him for the last few days, and he's usually really responsive." And I think, I was, like, on Instagram, and I follow other investors who are investing in that area as well, and one of the investors had mentioned that his fencer has, like, ghosted him too, and that he had already started work, and I was like, "I wonder if it's the same guy," and I think that's when we found out through Instagram that that fencer had gotten arrested because the father of that fencer had left a note for that investor saying, "My son got arrested. Please give me a call so I can give you your money back." And so I think that's how we found out that we were not going to get the work done by this fencer.
So, moral of the story is make friends with everybody in the area that you're investing in and get with them
Yes.
on social media because you'll get updates faster that way than any way else.
Yep. That was a small, like a, I don't know how chance that was, but I
Mm.
guess the town is small, so vendors are not far and wide.
Yeah, the next part, Sadie, our designer, was ordering furniture. So we're getting all of that scheduled and picking out pieces. I will say it was nice though to like not think about, hey, like which beds, because I could see us going back and forth on like nitpicking exactly which frame and things like that. So it was nice to just almost have that be completely hands off. And there was just a few things that we tried to suggest alternatives for to save money.
Yeah, and I think early on we decided that we're like, okay, again, staying in our investor lane and knowing that we're not interior designers, we knew that because this is our first time, we wanted to deliver a really good product. And so having that interior designer who has that experience, especially with setting up Airbnbs, was pretty clutch. So
Yeah. The next thing in October, the biggest thing was switching out the stove in the kitchen. And that was your project that you took on. What's the story time about the stove, Ash?
So as we mentioned before, the stove was tucked up in the corner. It didn't make functional sense. And so found a contractor to come out and essentially swap the location of the stove and the refrigerator. So that meant swapping the gas lines and the water lines. And so they had to open up a wall and do all of that. And so they did the work, and I wanted to make sure I came out there to check the work before we paid the final part of the fee to the contractor. And so luckily we did, because when we tried to turn on the gas for the house, we started smelling gas. And so I called the contractor. I said, "Hey, it kind of smells like gas in here." And he's like, "Okay, we'll send somebody out to come check it out." They come and check it out. They're like, "I don't see anything wrong. Everything seems to be running fine. Just air out the house a little bit because the gas can stay a little bit longer than just like air, I guess." And so um, we aired out the house for about like 3 or 4 hours, and then turned the gas back on, and the gas smell came back. And so the contractor came back, brought his little gas finder pen, and found out there was a gas leak in the wall. And so he had to come back, and open up the wall and find where the gas leak was. It turns out that they forgot to cap the original gas valve, of the original location of the stove. And so uh, I guess maybe kind of like the rookie move where you should probably get cap off the original location before you start work.
Yes, that was not like a great settling feeling. I mean, and what I was like, I was freaked out for you. I was like, that's like super dangerous.
Yeah. And that was a course of 3 days, so we didn't have hot water for three days.
Yeah. God, that was ridiculous. We got the electrician in there who did a good job of fixing the outlets and the light switches. Travis, our painter, did a fantastic job painting and was really quick about it as well. And at this point, furniture was getting in. The handyman came a couple times to get things staged. And this was now moving from October, or actually the very end of October. What we did at the very end was submit our short-term rental permit application, which we thought, hey, it takes, what is it? I think it's only like 2 to 4 weeks to process initially, and then you'll get your short-term rental permit. And so at this point, we were super optimistic. We were like, yeah, let's do one more closeout trip in November. We'll enjoy it, take some pictures, and then be off on our merry way. And I feel like though there's been so many things along the way already, like this is like just where it started to get started. November. So we had our original permit meeting set for November 26th. And we had, I think we did our kind of like, let's launch the Airbnb trip then. But that's also when we found out that there was going to be a town hall talking about short-term rentals. I don't know, Ash, you want to talk about your quick feelings on that, or what you remember from that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think the town hall, I think the root of it was that a lot of investors or a lot of folks were looking to convert properties into Airbnbs. And of course, um, the residents of the area were concerned about the increasing costs of homes and things like that. So I think a fair concern. And so the town hall essentially decided that, hey, there's a lot of things that are changing in this area right now. Let's put a moratorium in place to kind of hear the different opinions of folks in the area and decide like what's the best solution for everyone. And so personally, I think it was unfortunate for us as far as like launching, but I also understand why that there needs to be more regulations put in place so that it doesn't get too crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I am all about playing with the rules. It was just, we had this, basically finished Airbnb. There's a few minor things to tweak here and there. But yeah, I was like, oh, so we are now pausing. And I think what was difficult for me about that whole entire thing was that there was an unknown. We didn't know how long they were pausing for. They said, hey, the next town hall's in December. We'll have more information for you then. But there was no guarantee of anything. And so then we were kind of left in this like black hole of what's going to happen. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that bled into December, right, for the
Mhm.
next town hall. And there was some proposals in during the moratorium about adding different regulations to short-term rentals. And I think the biggest concern was having there was like a limitation that they proposed on how close two Airbnbs can be to each other. So they said 300 feet. You can't have another Airbnb within 300 feet of another Airbnb. And so that was concerning because there is another Airbnb in our neighborhood that was close to us as well. So I think a lot of folks who were operating or who were getting their permits and stuff were concerned about that.
What else happened in December? We were working through a fourth bedroom permit for that game room. Your family stayed.
Yes, we wanted to do a couple beta tests before we officially future launched. And so my family came to stay. Um, and it was like a heavy downpour the week that they came out. And so they came, they checked into a property that had a roof leak. And so that was another little speed bump for us as far as fully launching. And so we had to figure out how to find the root cause of that roof leak during that time. Um, yeah, I think that was like the biggest thing that happened in December.
I mean, that a roof leak is a big thing, and
Yeah.
we're still actually working through that right now with the home warranty
Yes.
claim. The last thing I think that happened in December was that we were negotiating with our handyman who installed and built all the furniture. It was one lesson learned for us was that we were under the assumption that he would be similar priced to our friend's Airbnb, who he also built out. And he built theirs out a couple months beforehand and charged them $2,500 to build out and install the furniture. For us, he initially quoted at the very end, it was done. He invoiced us $7,500, and we were like, "Wait a minute, this is $5,000 more than we initially thought." But for whatever reason, I don't know why, none of us thought to just like line item that with him. I mean, that skipped my head. Did that just like over yours too?
I think we just made the assumption that it was a flat rate. Like, based on the previous conversations, it sounded like it was a flat rate. So, I think it's just kind of like the trust but verify. Like, hey, this is what we heard, but I just want to verify it. And that was a huge lesson learned for us. Yeah.
So here we are, end of the year. We closed this thing, and this is like 3 months later from closing. We've already ate a couple mortgage payments, and we still don't know. We're still in this limbo pause. So enter the new year in January. January, we got a little bit more good news. I'd say on the permit side, we finally said that, hey, there's going to be a meeting in February scheduled for you guys. Ask your family stays again. And I feel like these trials were very good trials because
Yes, had family stay for the new year, and the thermocouple on the water heater went out, so they didn't have hot water for 2 days. It was the holidays, so we couldn't get somebody out there in time to get them hot water right away, so we had to wait a couple days. But luckily, that was easily fixed. We were worried that we were going to take on another large expense of a water heater replacement, but the thermocouple replacement was a couple $100.
So that was like, I don't know if that's crisis averted or just really good testing. Either way, that worked out. And then what we also found was that you were there actually. You went back in January to submit paperwork for our amenities because we had to
Yes.
get the potential hot tub, cowboy tub, and fire pit all approved by the city in order to have them in our backyard, right?
Yes, they required hard copies, and we had to fill out an application, a permit application, and deliver it. And so that was actually although it was like a tedious task, it was actually a nice opportunity to just get FaceTime with the public works office and kind of and the building department so that we can better understand like why do we need all these things, and then it allowed us to also check in on our permitting status as well. So
Yeah, I mean, whenever you can build rapport with the city officials because that will only help you in your business filings.
yes.
I guess there was 2 bits of good news, right? One, we had the STR permit meeting scheduled for February, so we finally had an ed date out of just not knowing. And the second one was that we did end up getting our 4th bedroom permit approved. So now we have a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, which from an equity standpoint increases the value of the property, and also just from an operational standpoint means that we can have more heads and beds, which means more potential revenue. Anything else for January? Gosh, it's like so much stuff.
No, I think that was enough.
Okay. So February begins the good news. At this point, we're like, okay, we have our meeting. Let's take our meeting. Let's start to operate. More bad news about the permit. We were all set for that meeting, and we were all on. You were actually in Hawaii on vacation. We had our local contact, our cleaner Amanda, who was going to help with that side of the management side, and then we were all on. It was early in the morning, and then the director never showed up to the meeting, and we were like, "Dude, what the heck?
What's happening?
This whole time, I don't understand." And so I immediately got onto the phone with one of the admins who were helping facilitate scheduling of the meeting. She was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. He had to run to an emergency. We don't know when you're going to get scheduled again." And at that point, I was just like, "Oh man, we can't just keep it sitting here." So at that point, I think we left it a couple days. And then I was like, "Hey, should we just do a month-long stay? Because we didn't need a permit for a month-long stay." What were your quick thoughts?
We had no idea when our next meeting was or what was happening, and I think that's when they mentioned that the process is going to change, and so we don't know what the new process is yet. And so that was another like worry for us. And so I think same thing. I think we didn't want to eat any more mortgage payments, and so we decided to just do a 30-day stay or list it as a 30-day stay.
And so at that point, it was like all systems go. We had pictures taken actually in January. So we'll include that. So the
Mhm.
last thing of January was that Maddie O'Neill, who is an awesome real estate photographer.
Yes.
If you need to
Yes.
hire her in Yucca, make sure you hire her. She took all of our pictures. And so we were launching on Airbnb for 30-day stays. And we actually ended up getting a fair amount of inquiries. And that's when we actually were like, oh crap, we're hosts now. But there were so many things like
We
we didn't
were
think
not
of this
ready.
stuff. But like I don't know. There was already a million problems, and like just to think about like the small nuances, like do you approve a guest with 0 reviews? And I mean, we were both and are still worried about that, but that seems to be super common.
Yeah, I think it's 40% of Airbnb users are new users. So I think most of them will not have a review because they've never used it before. So
Yeah, so it was just like, okay, what do we do? All that stuff. Like I'm sure like that could be a whole nother video in itself. But moral of the story is we had a number of inquiries, and we were vetting through some of them. All of them, of course, asking for an additional discount in addition to the discount that we were already giving for a month-long stay. Um, we ended up somehow, I guess, just offering someone something. um, or like pre-approving them. The buttons are actually very close, I will say, on like the communication platform on the phone. Maybe not the best UI, but you know.
yeah, I think the send button is right next to the pre-approve button, and so you can quickly pre-approve somebody on accident.
But either way, it seems like she's been a great guest so far.
Yeah,
And so we had that in there. And then 2 weeks later, their new system was that the director was just going to review the process and then get back to us. Um, and then that took another, I feel like an extra week than we thought, than she initially said.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and eventually, Ash was like, hey, can you just like ping her? I was like, okay.
Before the holiday, before the holiday.
So I emailed her, and then she came back with good news, like, hey, it's approved, and it's going to be in the mailbox. And at that point, we were just like, oh my God. Like that was 5 months of just running around in circles. And that's how we get to the point where now we have bookings on the phone.
Yeah, I
That
think we're aside from blocking off some time for the sewer connection, I think we're booked. March is pretty much booked, and then the first half of April is pretty much booked. So
So I don't know what is the moral of the story for the viewers, Ash? Like, what do you want them to take away from all of this?
Um, I think the main thing is I will say, like, throughout all of this, I don't think I've ever really stressed about it. It was kind of like, "Oh, man, we have to wait longer," or, "Oh, man, we have to eat another, mortgage payments," or whatever, but I was never stressed about, the whole situation because I think at the end of the day, we knew where we wanted to get, and so, we just kinda had to work through the different hurdles that we came across, and so and I will say, like, having a partner has been a huge, huge, huge help to spread the load. Because if I was doing this all by myself, I don't know if I would have been not stressed about it. So,
Yeah, it does. I mean, one, just financially being able to like spread the burden between two parties. I think for me is just like make sure you have a contingency and then a contingency to your contingency budget because
yep.
we completely wiped out our contingency budget and then had to re-put in more capital recently just to make it afloat. I mean, between rehabs costing a little bit more, holding for a lot longer than we thought, and all this jazz, you never know what could happen. In this case, who knew that the city would basically shut it down for months? I will say the last thing about finances, and maybe as a teaser for the next video that you should click on because it's down below, is I remember Hannah saying, like, we got like our first like 2 night bookings or whatever it was, and after everything, it was like, $1,500 net payout. And Hannah was like, wait, so for 2 nights, that's $1,500. What? We should just be doing this all the time. Like, this makes more money than the day job. And I was like, that was the whole point. This is why we were doing all this.
For
So
sure. And I guess in the next video, we could talk about the cost segregation and material participation too.
So if you want to figure out all of the financials, how much we spent in rehab, furniture costs, what our initial expectation was, and then what it actually ended up costing to get to this point, I guess you have to subscribe down below. You can follow Ash too. All of her socials are linked down below. So I hope you all enjoyed that story. I know it was a very long story, just like this, because of how long we have to cut. Imagine if you're watching this now, imagine how long the real A-roll was before we get to cut this down. So I hope you enjoyed it. Good luck on your short-term rental, and we'll see you guys in the next financial video. Thanks, you guys.